Hey guys, it's Crystal, and today I have a three-way camera comparison with the iPhone X, the S9 Plus, and the OnePlus 6. Now before we get into it, shout out to dbrand for sponsoring today's video. I got dbrand skins on all three of my phones today. We have white marble, black carbon, and the black camo skin, and they look so good. If you guys are interested, I got that dbrand link in the description below. And now let's take a look at some camera specs. So we kind of know the deal with the iPhone X and the S9 Plus. They both have dual 12 megapixel cameras with that second telephoto lens. They both have optical image stabilization on all their lenses. And the cool thing with the S9 Plus, of course, is that variable aperture from 1.5 to 2.4. And on the OnePlus 6, we also have two cameras on the back. The main camera is 16 megapixels and the second one is 20 megapixels. They both have an aperture of 1.7. Now with this phone, the second camera is not telephoto. It's kind of just there to help with portrait mode pictures and it's supposed to give you more detail in photos, but I guess we'll see how helpful that actually is when we test it out. Now before I show you all the pictures and videos, let's quickly take a selfie right off the bat, starting with the iPhone X, 7 megapixels with an aperture of 2.2. So let's take a OnePlus 6 selfie. This selfie camera has 16 megapixels with an aperture of 2.0. Cheese. And now let's do the S9 Plus. This selfie camera has 8 megapixels with an aperture of 1.7. And now I'm gonna take a closer look at those selfies on my laptop. Let's see. At first glance, I like how my face looks and the colors on the iPhone X, but it's just overexposed in some areas a little too much. Like, look at my shirt and my arm and even my nose. There's just no detail. There's just way too blown out in those areas. My skin on the OnePlus 6 and the overall photo has just cooler tones compared to the iPhone and the S9. And what I don't really love about S9 and S9 Plus selfies is how airbrushed they tend to look. Even with no beauty mode on, you still see softness in my face. So they all have their pros and cons here. And considering all that, I feel like I'd go for the OnePlus 6's selfie in this situation. But one thing to remember is that I also took this picture in portrait mode and the OnePlus 6 does not have that. Let's take a quick look at those for the S9 and the iPhone X. And again, with the whole portrait selfie thing, it's a cool feature to have, but it's definitely not perfect in any phone, I feel like. If you were to go for the OnePlus 6, you wouldn't be missing out on much if you don't have it there, so. And here's another regular daylight selfie with my sister. And they all do a pretty good job here. Another thing to note with the OnePlus 6 and the S9 Plus is the wider angled selfie cameras that they have. It's just nice to have if you want to get more people in the shot or you want to show that background more. But in terms of everything else, it's kind of the same as the first selfie. Bluer tones on the OnePlus 6. The S9 Plus just looks softer and a little more blurry than the other two. Of the three here, I think I'd go for the iPhone selfie, but they all look pretty good. Now let's take a look at some rear camera photos, starting with this picture of me next to some flowers, as always. First things first, S9 Plus has the brightest picture, iPhone's is the darkest, and the OnePlus 6 is right in the middle. And even though the iPhone X is the darkest picture, it seems to have the most detail of the three. Zooming into my shirt and my hair, we can see this. And I know that the OnePlus 6 has more megapixels in its camera, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna have the most detail or the best quality picture. I think that'll really help it in low light, but we'll see when we get to low light photos. But for now, iPhone's picture definitely has the most detail. But I do love that the OnePlus 6 keeps the subject nice and bright. I also took this same picture in portrait mode, so let's take a look at those. I really love bits and pieces of all three. I love the colors in the iPhone's photo. I think the OnePlus 6 does the best job at keeping detail in the subject, and the S9 just exposes everything very nicely. There's definitely overexposed areas on the iPhone's photo, and I don't know what it is about the OnePlus 6, but it just seems a little fake to me compared to the other two. Just looking at the ground, it seems to shift to the blur too soon. And the S9 Plus might be my overall favorite here, even though when we zoom into my face, you can see that it's definitely still a little too soft. Let's take another quick look at another portrait mode picture where I really push the limits of portrait mode in these phones, because I told my sister to shoot directly at the sun, like with the sun behind me. So they're all gonna have like a softer look to them. When we look at the OnePlus 6's photo, it's definitely gonna look a little more unnatural compared to the other two, because my head looks really big and my body looks really squished together because of that wide angle. But it's just a different look. Even though it's the most unnatural looking one, it keeps me nice and bright. And again, we're seeing that softer image on the S9 Plus, and that's just a characteristic of this camera. And I really love the overall look of the iPhone's picture. I love that it kept the most detail in my face. But portrait mode isn't doing too great of a job here because you can really see those little edges and mistakes next to my arm there. Here's some more portrait mode pictures, kind of showing the same thing as these photos. And here's this American flag star hybrid thing, back to non-portrait pictures on the rear camera. And I really love the way the OnePlus 6 is looking here. It's just an overall better exposed photo. It keeps the subject nice and bright. I really love the vibrancy and the punch in colors on the OnePlus 6. I also love the warmness of the photo. The other two just seem kind of dull. But again, if we zoom into the star, we can really see that the iPhone seems to be the most consistent with keeping the most detail in photos. That being said, I still feel like the OnePlus 6 is the overall better looking photo here, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And here's a more landscape photo. We get a really good look at the sky here, even though it was pretty overcast, so they all look kind of the same. Now, what really stuck out to me in this photo was how well the iPhone did with shadows and darker areas. Not only does it give you more detail, but you can just see a lot more in the photo. Again, there's bits and pieces that I like in these photos. I feel like the S9 Plus has a better looking sky. The OnePlus 6, I really like the colors in this photo, and on the iPhone, it's just the most evenly exposed photo. This picture reminds me of the American flag star picture because it's kind of the same where the OnePlus 6 just exposes that subject really nicely while still keeping the background and like the sky looking really good too. Where on the iPhone, the subject looks good and we get a lot of detail, but the background is just completely overexposed. And the S9 Plus, I mean, it's a good picture, but it's just a little too dark. And this next photo of my cute little Gabby, kind of the same thing that we've been seeing with these rear camera photos where the subject is nice and bright on the OnePlus 6, getting the most detail on the iPhone's picture, and the S9 Plus picture, good photo, but just a little too dark. This next photo is a more landscape one, and I really love how the OnePlus 6 exposes that sky, and just the overall photo is not too bright, it's not too dark, it's like right in the middle. The iPhone exposes the subject nicely, but definitely always overexposes that background. The iPhone's picture looks the most true to life in terms of color. Overall, of these three photos, the OnePlus 6 is definitely the most eye-catching one. And speaking of eye-catching photos, take a look at this next one of this very delicious vegan burger from the Penzi in New York. So this photo proves that whether you're indoors or outdoors, we're still kind of gonna see the same things that we've been seeing throughout the video. And whenever I'm in New York, I feel like I always take this picture of the Empire State Building. What I did in this photo, I took advantage of the telephoto lens on the iPhone 10 and the S9 Plus to get a closer look at the Empire State Building. And with the OnePlus 6, you can zoom in digitally, but it won't be the same amount of detail that you get with a telephoto lens. And I kind of took this next photo just for fun. We're seeing highlights a little blown out on the S9 Plus. The OnePlus 6 gives you the most vibrant looking photo, and the iPhone staying pretty consistent to what we've been seeing. Zooming in, it gives you the most information and also the more natural looking photo. So after looking at all these daylight pictures, I feel like it's safe to say that the OnePlus 6 consistently gives us better exposed pictures, also the more vibrant looking photos. And even though iPhone colors have gotten more vibrant and saturated looking in the past year, it's still the more true to life looking picture overall. In all these photos, the iPhone tends to overexpose its highlights a little too much sometimes. We also got to remember the slight advantage with the S9 Plus is that it has variable aperture, but I feel like that's more helpful in low light photos. So let's take a look at some low light photos now. Let's see those low light differences in this picture of my car's wheel. So of course all these photos are gonna have some grain to them, but the OnePlus 6 is looking like the most grainy of the bunch. For me, it's pretty close between the iPhone and the S9 Plus in this picture because the S9 Plus definitely does a better job at exposing properly. Let's take a look at another one. The OnePlus 6 and the S9 Plus look way better than the iPhone in this picture. The iPhone's colors look a little too green. It's also really hazy, like the whole picture is just very faded looking, and also those lights next to the door have that flaring effect going on. All the highlights are a little too overexposed. Zooming in, we really see that smoothing effect that the S9 Plus does in its photos, but that kind of helps with the grain. And in these next couple photos, we kind of see the same thing where the iPhone still has that faded look and the lights are still flaring a lot. And now let's take a look at a low light selfie. I know these are gonna be pretty bad, but let's take a look anyway. A lot of grain on the OnePlus 6. The S9 Plus coming in with that super soft, blurry looking image. And the iPhone is just extremely dark and really green looking. But I gotta say, if I had to pick one of these, I'd probably go with the S9 Plus here. And now let's see some 4K video from all three phones on the rear camera. Right away, I can tell the OnePlus 6 is the smoothest of the three and the less shaky when I'm walking. I'm loving the iPhone's colors here. It's just so real looking, especially when you're putting it next to the other two. And that's just a personal preference thing. Like, I rather color grade the video myself than have the camera do it for me. The S9 Plus seems to focus on things slightly faster, but they all do a pretty good job with that. So yeah, I guess overall, whether you're taking pictures, daylight photos, low light photos, or videos with these phones, they all did consistently really good. Like, they were all really consistent with what they do. We definitely saw the more detailed photos and more true to life pictures with the iPhone X. But again, totally a preference thing. If you prefer softer looking images while still having a lot of detail, you'll probably go for the S9 Plus. The S9 Plus also seemed to be the all-around best low light camera. And with the OnePlus 6, I was really impressed with its daylight photos and how it exposed everything so evenly and nicely. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Which of the three phone cameras was your favorite? And again, shout out to Dbrand. Make sure you check out that link to Dbrand skins in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you later.